Hello YouTube, RJ. Welcome back to part 2, restoring the old Silvertone 7014 model radio. If you haven't seen the part 1 of this, I recommend you follow this link right here and go watch that first, because this is a continuation, and then pop right back here and watch us finish up and get this thing done and operational. Hey, I'm back. I've got the capacitors came in for the radio. I did not stuff them in the can. They wouldn't fit. There was no way I was going to fit these in this can capacitor. It wasn't worth the work, and I just wasn't going to be able to pull it off. I just put them in the circuit board. You can see here, best clean, most clean installation that I could do. Everything else is good. Everything else is ceramic. It has one of those ceramic packages that handled a lot of the capacitors in one. It's all, if you look, you'll see there's ceramic capacitors everywhere. The only thing I haven't changed that I will be is the so-called death capacitor. If we look at the schematic, you know, you've got the capacitor that crosses the AC line. I'll change it out. That's not going to affect the operation of the radio. That's just a safety thing in case that thing ever shorts out. Safety capacitors are designed to go open in a failure, and the others will short. So I'm going to change it out, but other than that, that's the only electronics I'm changing out. I put a new bulb in for the dial indicator bulb. I don't have the cord in to rewire. The tone cord is still there, but I'm going to replace it anyway. The tuning cord is gone, so I'm having to reach over and move the variable capacitor manually, which is a little tricky because when you touch it, you affect it, and when you let go, so you have to play with it. But I did turn it on already once, brought it up real slow, made sure everything was good. We'll do it again for you. I meant to film it, actually. I kind of got one track mind and forgot to turn the cameras on and went ahead and brought it up, but that's kind of where we are. Let's turn it on. Let's see what we got. I've got it off the dim bulb. I had it on the dim bulb when I originally brought it up, but of course it wasn't getting full current, so I removed it off the dim bulb. Light is on the indicator. We're getting 117 volts. I'll bring it up to 120. Okay, and it should warm up. There's the bulb brightening up, dimming down. Something over here I see. Sorry about bumping the camera. Got something heating up here. Smoking. Didn't notice that before. It looks like that carbon resistor is kind of cooked, so maybe we need to be changing out a resistor. I also noticed I'm not getting any audio now. Okay, something's going on that wasn't going on before. All right, we definitely got a resistor that's cooking. Not sure why. Nothing has changed here. All right, I'm going to do a little more research and see what I got going on here. We just had it playing. Interestingly enough, it came up and was working, so I'm not sure. It's not pulling excessive current. It's only pulling 25 watts. It's supposed to be about 30. Of course, I have the voltage a little low here. The resistor that was smoking, I pulled it out, and the one next to it is really charred, even worse. And so I pulled them out, and I put them on the meter. They're supposed to be this is resistor R6 and R8. They're supposed to be 330 ohms. This one is 2.2K. This one is 0.66K. They're both not even close to being the right values. I'm going to go ahead and change those out. They came out of the board. My desolderer makes this fairly easy. I'll be back once I've got those changed out. So I started checking resistors. These were the two. This one, let me use my pointer here. This one right here was cooked. I mean, it literally had been overheated, something serious. This one was actually looked a little cooked, but was smoking some. So I was worried I was pulling too much current. I don't think that's what happened. I think these carbons have just went to pots, absorbed moisture or whatever over the years. So I've replaced those, and I'm going through the other resistors. I just checked this beefy one right here. He's good. He's reading perfectly fine. There's an R3 that I've taken out from right here, which is right here on the bench, to show you just how bad some of these resistors can get over the years. This particular resistor is R3, and he's supposed to be 1 million ohms. And I put my meter on, and you can't see it in the camera, I'm sorry, but this is reading 44.8 kilo ohms. This is supposed to be 1 mega ohm. I checked myself about 3 times to make sure I'm looking at the right resistor. And yes, I'll go verify the colors to make sure, but yes, this is the 1 mega ohm resistor. I've pulled out a 1 mega ohm. I've got 1.5 watt, a watt, 1 watt. I'm going to put him in, and this is just what I'm going through is looking for components that are out of spec and working to get them in spec so that we could see if we can get this thing working like it's supposed to be. Be back once I'm done with this and let you know how I made out. So far, 3 resistors being changed out. Probably going to find a few more. So okay, here's why you've got to be careful working on these old radios. You've got the data sheets and everything guiding you, and they're sometimes just absolutely wrong. People make mistakes. I'm going to show you one here that was just popped up. We just talked about this resistor I pulled out. It's right here on the sheet. If you can see it, it's R3. You see that clearly. It's a 1 meg, right? So you go over to the location image here, and you can see that the resistor I was showing you is right here. It's R3, clearly marked R3 right there. It's right beside this 12AV6 tube. That's the resistor I pulled out. And I tested it, and I come up with like 40, here, let me see what it is. I think it was 44 or something. It's 44.8 kilo ohms. 44.8. I'm like, wow, that's way out because it's supposed to be 1 meg. I'm going to change it. But as I said in the last little clip, I'm going to look at the color codes real quick, just verify it. And I did, and this made no sense. When I looked at the color codes, I realized this thing's calling for a 47K. Okay, this says it's a 47K. It's a little out, don't get me wrong. I'm going to change that out. That's too far off. But it isn't 1 mega ohm. So I'm confused. So I start looking through the sheet real carefully. And what I find is, if you look up here at the resistors again, let me get them where you can see. You see you've got an R2 that's 22 kilo ohms. You've got R3, which we're working with 1 meg. You've got R4 47. And I look, there's only 47K. And I think, well, okay, the only 47K in the radio is supposed to be R4. So what is going on here? So I go to the schematic and I find R3. And here's R3, the one we're working with. And notice it's listed as 47K, not 1 meg. But if you look around, you find R2 is listed as 1 meg. Now, there's only one resistor in this thing that's 1 meg, according to the parts list. It says it's R3, but it's not. It's R2. So you got to be careful. I needed to change this. That's too far out tolerance for me. I'm gonna change it out. But you got to be careful because they've made mistakes. They've got these resistors confused around. They're showing, R2 is 22K and it's 1 meg. They're showing R3 is 1 meg and it's really 47K. And R4 is going to be, if I find it, it'll be 22, I'm sure. So they've swapped these resistors all around. So you've got to be very careful when you're working on these things as far as what the information is telling you. It can very, very easily send you in a very bad, wrong area, I could have put a 1 meg in there and couldn't figure out why this thing wouldn't work at all. And, there I am trying to figure out what I've done wrong. So just a little blip that happened. I thought it's a perfect case of, what really happens in the real world that I wanted to get a video of. I'll get back to it and we'll get this straightened around. Okay, still working on the radio. I got some resistors changed. I changed the 2 resistors that were burnt. I changed that 47K. It was, it was with right at the edge of specs, but I went ahead and changed it. This radio, I'm doing this radio with the intent of this thing working for many, many, many years. So if it's close and it's going to drift more and cause a problem, I want to fix it now. So I changed that. I found one other resistor that was marginal and I changed it. And we're at the point now where my biggest concern is I'm quite sure this radio probably has silver micro disease. If you're not familiar with that, I've pulled these IF transformer cans because in the bottom of them are some little 100 picofarad capacitors made by depositing silver on a thin piece of mica, and that goes bad and causes your radio not to receive and to have noise and such. So I'm going to go ahead. My theory is if I don't have it, people say, oh man, you don't know you have it. Why are you doing this? If I don't have it, I know these things will eventually have it. So I'm going to go ahead and fix them now, do the work now, so this radio will continue to work for many, many years. So basically you take them out, and there's some little crimped areas right on the sides of the can here. I've worked my way out and I'm ready to start taking this out if it'll come out. And this, also, by the way, you might notice I put a mark. I've marked down here on the base. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Maybe you will. Can you see the mark up in here? I've marked to make sure I know where this goes back together. Now, this coal just sits in a little cup, so you have to be careful. And I'll set this out of the way. And if you can see, there are very fine wires connecting this thing up. So unfortunately, I don't have the easy. There's 2 styles. This one has a rivet in the bottom, as you can see. Both of mine are that style, unfortunately. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drill this rivet out. It means I'm going to have to epoxy the can back in, which is perfectly fine. The problem is when you drill this out, I don't know that I can do that without twisting this whole thing, breaking wires, and destroying this. So what I'm going to do is instead, I'm going to mark these wires. I'm going to desolder them from these pins. I'm going to take this and set it out of the way. Then I'm going to drill that rivet out to get this plastic here out so I can get under into silver mica. Now you say, RJ, hey, it's a lot of work for not knowing you have it. Well, I'm quite sure it has it or will have it, and you might not be able to see. I don't know if I can get it to where you can see, but if you can make out, let me come up here, turn the light up. Sorry for the adjustments. Let me see if I can lighten it up here a little and focus it a little on this. Get up. How close can I get to focus? Can you see the darkness around this contact right here and the darkness up in here? Okay, that's typical silver mica. So I'm pretty sure this has silver mica disease. If it doesn't, what I'm doing sure is not going to be a negative. It means that we can make sure this thing's going to last for many years. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be doing microsurgery. I'm going to mark these, unsolder them, drill that out, get this plastic out, bend these up, get this out. The 2 tabs you see in here that fold in, there's one underneath and one above. I'll fold those out. I'll get that mica resistor out, or I'm sorry, capacitor out. I'll come back and show that at that point. I'll get it out. My plans is I'm just going to solder the capacitors across the pins underneath the radio so we can get to them. And that should make sure that we're in good shape. So I'll be back when I've got that far. Okay, I've got it apart. I want to talk a little about, number one, what I did and how it all goes together. The feet for the bottom of the socket. Get where you can see decent here. Here's where you solder into the board, right? Well, these little feet just slide in slots on the side like this. And then what happens is you have your famous silver mica capacitor here, which you can see that mine, if it wasn't giving me troubles, it was headed there. It's I don't know if this was causing a problem already, but you know, you can see the silver mica disease. It would have just been a matter of time anyway. But this goes in, and these, you have this little plastic block that goes down on, holds everything together and locks these pins in. And this cup here goes through the plastic, the hole in the plastic, and it gets riveted on the bottom. That's the rivet that we saw. And I've drilled that out with a drill bit. I just took a drill bit just big enough that it would drill the edge of the, you know, as if you were drilling this hole just a little bit bigger. So it cut the copper. As I started to drill, it cut the copper. Maybe you can see this, and therefore it took out the bottom of the rivet. And so once that did, this all comes apart. I've taken the silver mica out. What I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to put this back together without the silver mica capacitor in there. This is simply going to go in. I'm going to push this back in place, but I'm going to put a little epoxy on it, and a little 5-minute epoxy, and let it dry. And then once it dries, I'll put the unit back. I'll actually put the transformers back in, the stock back in, solder the hair wires back on, put it back in its can, and this one will be ready to go back in the radio. And then once it's back in the radio, once it's soldered back in, I'll solder across to give me the capacitors on the bottom of the radio. So I'll put some capacitors in there and we'll be good to go. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm going to do that. I'm also going to do that on this other one, and we'll hopefully get that done. And I've got the so-called death capacitor to change out. I'll talk about that when I get to that point, and then I think we'll be ready to try this thing and see if it'll work. I'll be back. Okay, and we're done. This radio is complete. Other than the plastic repair and cosmetics and stuff, wasn't that bad. Here's everything I had to do to it. I had to change out the electrolytic capacitors for the filters, a new dial indicator, or a new dial light lamp. Had to restring it with new dial cord. Had 3 resistors that were enough out of spec that I changed them. The infamous silver mica disease issue on 2 IF transformers. So I repaired that. And of course the death cap across the AC line. I changed it with a safety capacitor. And I didn't get radical and do a whole lot more with it. Now, in the lab here, we're not going to receive a whole lot. We really need an outside antenna for AMs. We don't have that many stations. Well, in fact, we don't really have any close stations, and none of them are very strong. So you really have to have an outside antenna if you want to do this. It's fully functional. I did the alignment after I finished fixing the IF transformers. I put them in, turned it on. It came right on. It actually started to receive stuff. So I did a quick alignment, hardly touched it, didn't move much. And here we are. See what we can find on the dial. quite a number of stations for our area, actually. Normally we go across the band.
And praying the memorare to end abortion of all human life from conception to natural death.
So we got a lot of stations in there. It's just they're not very strong inside the library. I've only got the little ferrite loop antenna.
He lied on a gun for him. He was a drug addict.
In fact, put my hand back here. Here, let me get over to the station. I'll show you. Put it down with them. Get over here and watch when I put my hand near the ferrite core. See how it just clears right up? I need more antenna, better antenna, outside antenna. Anyway, that's it. I don't think it turned out. It's also a ferrite core. Of course, directional for turning it changes. The other problem. And turn it down. And I did come up with the very best representation of the data sheet and made up a new data sheet and put on it. So that's it. We got a working AM radio. Grandmom's radio is back working like it used to. I hope it was worth the watch. See you in the next video where we pick up some a new project and take off.